Hello, Tungsten Miner here. Last time I left off, I was talking about gendustry and beekeeping, so I'm going to carry straight on and talk about where things have gotten to since then. You might recall last time I was breeding some leporine bees in this apiary. Well, they've finished up, and I've now got my princess back again, and I've got a whole stack of leporine drones. And one of the things we had noticed last time was that these drones have an effect of festive, which I hadn't seen before, and I don't really know what it is. And I'm going to show you how you isolate a particular gene that's a new one for you. So you need your genetic sampler. I've got some blank gene samples in here. I'm going to need some labware and toss that in there. And now all I need to do is toss in my leporine drones, and every time one of those drones gets entered into the machine, it's going to isolate one of the traits. Now, I don't know which of the traits it's actually going to wind up isolating, so I just kind of have to wait and see. All right, species leporine, fine, I'll keep that one. I wait for the next one to come across. And it might be the same trait again, it might be a different trait. Lifespan normal, see that's one I've already got. So I don't particularly care about keeping this one because I've already got that in my chest over there. So I'm going to take this and toss it into here, and it's going to go through my furnace, and all of the genetic material is going to get burned out. So I've got a blank gene sample again, which I can just toss back in here. Species leporine again, species leporine again. You know, it's funny, they say that it's random which trait you wind up getting, but it seems like certain ones come up a lot more often than others. And the funny thing is that for all the time I've been doing this, species is seemingly one of the rarest ones to come up. It's one of the ones that I'm always trying to get and never do get. In any case, I don't need to keep more than one of these, so I'm going to take one of these species traits, and I'm going to toss it in my gene bank here. So all the different species that I've got so far, that goes there. And I keep them in alphabetical order so that I can find the ones I'm looking for when I'm looking for them. And I'm going to take the rest of these that I don't need now, and I'll toss them in there to get all scrubbed out. And let's see here, territory average I've already got, species leporine I've already got. So now there's no more empty gene samples, and it's stopped processing. So I'm going to have to go back over here and get the ones that are finished and toss them back in the machine. So this process can go on for a while if you're trying to find one of the 13 genes, because it's random and you don't really know. And sometimes it seems like it takes forever to come up. I've gone through, I don't know, 30, 40 bees. Yeah, I've been through 10 bees already, and I still haven't gotten that festive effect. So I'm going to stop talking now and just let this go through. And well, there you go. Here we are. Just when I thought I'd have to go off screen and let this happen for a while. So yeah, I'm going to take the bees out. I'm going to leave the blank gene samples there. We'll clean up all the rest of these. And I'm going to stick my leporine bees in my chest here, and I've got a spot for all these extra drones, so I'll toss them in there. And now I've got my effect festive gene sample, and so I'm going to toss that in here as well. So effect none is what I've got so far, and I'll throw effect festive in as well. So that's kind of what there is for bee breeding. I've walked through how do you force a mutation to get new bees last time. We bred ourselves this leporine bee. I showed how you bring it out and let it develop some new drones and then isolate whatever traits you want. Once you've isolated the species trait, you can take one of your genetic templates and craft it together with your species sample. This one's blank, but if you had a species one, you can craft it together. And then you can run it through the genetic imprinter to convert any old bee into that species. Once you've got the new species, you can come back in here and toss it back in this top slot along with some other drone and repeat the process on and on and on to go from species to species to species to get whatever it is you're looking for. So what else can you do with these machines? Well, you can also do tree breeding. Well, it's getting dark, so let's take care of that first. Okay, I talked a little bit about forestry in some of my other videos. And, oh look, we have friends. Get out of here. And we got some more friends. I did not have my powered lanterns extended this far, so whenever it's nighttime, I do have to cope with guests in my arboretum here. Okay, so we've all seen regular old oak trees from vanilla Minecraft. If you take one of these oak trees and you process it through one of the forestry tools, it will turn into an apple oak sapling. And it's just a regular sapling. You plant it like any other sapling. It grows into a tree that looks exactly like a regular oak tree. Um, but it's a forestry tree, so it has all the different kind of gene traits that you might expect for trees to have, of how wide they are, how quickly they grow, what kind of fruits they have, what sort of climate they can grow in. All of these are different things that are controllable, just like all of the different traits that bees can have. So I've got not a birch tree, but a silver birch tree. I've got not a jungle tree, but a, well, it just says jungle, but this is a forestry jungle tree. And instead of a regular spruce tree, I've got red spruce. And then I think there's acacia around here someplace. But all of these are the vanilla trees just run through the forestry machine that converts them into forestry trees. The rest of these trees were produced using exactly the same techniques that you use for breeding bees. But with bees, you've got queens and you've got drones. With forestry, with trees, you don't have queens and you don't have drones. Well, you've got saplings, but what's the other part? Where's the other genetic material come from? Well, I can show you because I've built myself a place up here, which is where I started talking about forestry, that allows me to collect that second piece. So here we are. This is my alveary, and we've talked about how to build these things from various bee byproducts. Once you've got one, though, you can do all sorts of different things by setting up different kinds of alveary blocks. In this case, I've taken some of those standard alveary blocks and converted them to alveary sieves. And if I right-click on this guy, you can see I've put some of that woven silk in here, and I've let it run for a while, and eventually it starts to collect pollen from all of the different tree species that are nearby. So apple oak and common rowan, silver birch. And if I look around, I can see here's larch, here's bull pine, here's common rowan, alder, apple, lemon, on and on and on, all sorts of different ones. In fact, all of the ones where I'm actively pursuing some line of crossbreeding. And so all of these are the input trees to that mutation process, where I want to get pollen from each of them in order to be able to crossbreed it with the sapling from some other species. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to grab some common rowan, acacia, kapok, and Brazil nut. Now you notice the woven silk went away as soon as I grabbed the first one. The woven silk gets consumed in the process of collecting the pollen. And unfortunately, there's no way to automate replenishing it. So you kind of just have to come back manually and do it once in a while. So I brought some along so I can just set that up. And if I go away for a while, come back later, I'll wind up with more pollen in here. Now I'm not going to bother collecting all the pollen, but for now, let's run back to my bee machines room. Okay, back again to my bee and I should say tree machine room, because this same machine and that machine and that machine and all the different machines can work equally well to crossbreed trees as they can for bees. So if I come in here and I take, let's see, what can we do with common rowans? So I'm going to use NEI to bring up my, here we go, tree breeding panel. So I can take rowan and combine it with alder to get holly. And I don't think I've done holly yet, so let me see if I have any common alder saplings. Let's see, common alder sapling, there we go. Oh, that's ash, common alder. So I'm going to grab one of those, and I'm going to take it and toss it in here. I'm going to take my rowan and toss it in there. And common hollies, but I don't have any labware, so I need to go grab some labware. There we go. And now I toss my labware in there, and I can click on the sapling that I want. Now this is an advanced mutatron instead of just a regular mutatron. The only difference between the two is that the regular mutatron randomly chooses any of the mutations that are possible between two different species. In this case, there's only one possible mutation, but all these extra boxes are here to be able to show you what the other options are, if there are any. Since there aren't, having an advanced mutatron doesn't really help me. But in cases where there are lots of possibilities, it's really, really handy because you might already have gotten one of the mutations and you want to get the other. Okay, so let's not do that. Just like with bee breeding, you've got a beealyzer. For tree breeding, you've got a treealyzer. And it works the same way. You put honey in the top, you put the sapling right underneath, and it will tell you the various traits. So common holly, lots of things not of much interest. The thing I wanted to know is the girth. The girth means if you were to chop the tree down at the base, what size is the cross section? So in this case, 1 by 1. So there's just one log that makes up the trunk of the tree. If it said 2 by 2, I'd have 2 logs and 2 logs. So 4 altogether, 2 on a side. Sometimes it's 3 by 3, sometimes it's even bigger. The important thing for me to know right now, though, is how many saplings do I need? Because in order to grow a tree, you have to have as many saplings as makes up the girth. So I need to know, should I crossbreed a few more of these things before I can go plant it and see what happens? So I've got my tree, and I'm going to go off and grab myself some fertilizer, because I want to be able to grow this thing without having to wait around for it. Okay, so I got myself some fertilizer, and I got myself a dirt block. And I'm going to plant this holly sapling and see what I get. Okay. Common holly leaves, holly wood, and it looks like it's a 3 by 3 overall set of leaves, which is important to know because as I'm setting up all my trees, I want my arboretum to be set up so that the trees don't quite touch each other. I always want to leave at least one block of space between trees. Not all trees always grow the same dimensions. Just like the oak trees in vanilla Minecraft will sometimes get really big and sometimes stay pretty small. The same is true of these forestry trees. So as much as you can kind of grow them a bunch of times and try and figure out how big they're going to wind up being in order to leave that gap, sometimes they're a little unpredictable. So you kind of have to do the best you can. But I've got lots of different varieties, and I've gotten pretty good at figuring out where they're going to fit. And you can see for the bases, I've used both microblocks and architecture blocks to make these nice little tree planters. Okay, so back over to our holly tree here. The thing I really need to do now is make sure I get a bunch of saplings, right? Because I only created the one sapling out of my genetic machine, and there are no more saplings existing in the world. There's some leaves, but not saplings. So I need to reliably turn these leaves into saplings. So I'm going to run off and grab the tool that does that and be right back. Okay, back again, and I've got now my industrial grafter. Now, this is not the kind of tool you're going to start the game with, so let's talk about that for just a moment. Just like when you first get going with beekeeping, you're going to make yourself a scoop. When you first get going with tree breeding, you're going to make yourself a grafter. And the standard recipe is this guy right here. Oops, right there, which is just some sticks and a chunk of bronze at the end. Now these things get used up really, really fast. I mean, like a dozen maybe saplings you can produce with them. So you're going to want to upgrade. Proven grafters can be obtained from villagers, but only from villagers, and usually by trading emeralds or something similarly expensive. Gendustry adds this guy, which is the industrial grafter. So you take your regular grafter, add a couple of diamonds, add a power module, which is not easy to make or cheap. But what you wind up with then is this industrial grafter, which can have up to 500 charges. And I don't know exactly how much RF power this is, but it's a lot. So this is not something you're going to use lightly. But once you've got one, things get easier. Not only do you not have to break things one at a time, but you basically just get the whole tree in one go, which is, yeah, quite a lot nicer than having to do them one at a time. So I'm going to break down the rest of this tree, get myself some hollywood. And usually what I wind up doing now is I'll just add it to the Arboretum, and I've kind of long since run out of room everywhere else in the regular part, so I've started building along the side here, and I'll eventually have to figure out what I'm going to do after that. Like I said, I try to keep them so that they're separated from each other. So here's the second block, that leaf block. So I want to leave a space, and I know the holly tree has leaves that extend one space away from the trunk, so here's where that other leaf goes, which means the trunk needs to go here. So I can plant that, and then plant that, grab myself some bone meal, and there we go. So, like I was saying before, they don't always grow the same size. So in this case, it's grown right up against that other tree. So now I know I can't count on this tree to always grow in such a small fashion. So I'm going to knock this one down, and I'll grow it again where it's a little bit further away. Okay, and now we've got a holly tree that's properly spaced away from its neighbors. And that's the process of breeding a new tree. Now that I've got a whole bunch of holly tree saplings, I can see what I might be able to do in breeding these further. And it looks like I can put it in my Mutatron and get a boxwood sapling by crossbreeding with common alder. So really, you just repeat the process. I'd go back up to my alveary, see if I've got some common alder pollen up there, bring that back down to my genetics room, and pop it in the machines in order to go on to the next species. So what's the point of all this? Well, with bees, you can get lots of useful outputs, including things like diamond chips, remember, so you can get some really, really useful stuff. Trees, not so much. The thing that you really get with the trees is mostly fruit or nuts. So if I were to break that leaf, I'm going to get myself a citron. And of course, if I break all the tree's leaves, then I'll get whole lots of citrons. And if I replant the tree and grow it again, I'll get even more. So this is a way to very rapidly get yourself a ton of food. There are other trees that grow other things. So over here is a papaya tree. Those little pods are not cocoa beans, but they're papayas. And they work pretty much the same way, though. Those are, I forget what these guys are, bananas. Don't look a lot like bananas, but they are bananas. And that's what you'll get when you break them down. You also can get things like this guy. So this is a sequoia. Its wood is fireproof, which is handy because one, you get a whole lot of it, and two, you can then take it with you to places like the Nether and it won't catch on fire, and you can grow more of it. The unfortunate thing is being fireproof, you can't burn it to charcoal, so you wind up with a lot of wood that a little bit more restricted than usual in what you can do with it. In any case, that gives you the full extent of what you can do with Gendustry to expand your forestry adventures. So remember, I've got both forestry and Binny's mods, which gives you extra trees and extra bees. So a lot of the trees you're seeing here are actually not available in plain old forestry. You want to get Binny's mods in order to expand in that direction. The same goes for a lot of the bees. That's it for this video, and that's it for the exploration of beekeeping and forestry. If you've got any questions or there's something I didn't cover, go ahead and leave a comment. If you liked the video, go ahead and click that like button, and if you want to see more stuff like this, hit subscribe. Talk to you later.